The Hall of Judgment was the oldest place on Varix 9. Its tall crystal walls shined in the sunlight, but the mood inside was dark and tense. Alien leaders from across the galaxy sat in silence. Their long robes, colorful skin, and blinking eyes showed the wide mix of species, but they all looked toward one place, the center platform, where an old Kothari elder stood. Elder Koro was from a race known for wisdom, not war. He had lived over 400 years. His face was thin, with deep lines that told many stories. His voice was soft but steady as he spoke. "Do not test the humans," Elder Koro said, holding up a thin hand. "Do not provoke them. We warn the Trelax. We beg the Vunari. You all remember what happened." Some of the council members looked away. They did remember. The Trelax had once tried to take a small Earth ship orbiting a gas moon. They had laughed at human design, calling it weak. That was 3 cycles ago. Today, no Trelax systems were found on any map. The Vunari, proud and cold, had once cut off supplies to a human colony. A single ship returned to their capital, empty, drifting. Its crew missing. No war had been declared. No formal battle. But the message was clear still. Not everyone agreed. A younger species called the Dranthus had taken more seats in the council recently. Their leader, a loud one named Churak, stood up with pride. His skin was pale green and his eyes glowed slightly. "We hear the same warning every cycle." "Elder Koro," Churak said, "but what proof do you give?" "No sign report, no data we can see, only your fear." Several Dranthus around him nodded. Others joined in. "The humans take too much land," said a thin, sharp-voiced alien from the Finari race. "They expand without asking. Their ships settle in neutral zones. They grow fast," said another. "Faster than any of us did. They must be shown limits," Churak added. Elder Koro shook his head slowly. "You do not understand them," the elder replied. "They are not conquerors, but they are not soft. They build, they suffer, but when they strike back, they do not stop. They are like a quiet storm. You do not hear them until it is too late." Churak waved his hand. "Then we shall test them," he said. "A small push. Nothing major. We will pick a border colony. We will remove a few settlers. We will see what they do. If they show violence, we act. If not, we move forward." Elder Koro stepped back. His eyes were heavy with sadness. "Your test will be your own undoing," he said. But no one listened. Far from Varix 9, across several star systems, a planet named Tarnus spun slowly around. A bright yellow sun. It was dry but rich in minerals and full of farming potential. A group of humans had built a small settlement there. It had taken them years to make it livable. The air was thin, and sandstorms came often, but they worked hard. Their leader was a man named Mason. He had once been an engineer on Earth, fixing old machines in the underground cities. When Earth approved outer system colonies, he had joined the first group of settlers. His hands were always dirty, and his face was sunburned. But he smiled often. Mason wasn't a fighter. He believed in building. Under him, the colony grew from tents to strong buildings made of local stone and metal. They had water tanks, solar panels, and even small greenhouses. Children played in the open. Life was simple, but it was theirs. On the 15th day of the dry season, that peace ended. The sky turned dark around noon. People ran outside and looked up. 5 alien ships hovered above the town. Their shapes were smooth, like bones from a giant sea creature. A voice came through the comm systems, deep and cold. "This colony is no longer legal. You have 1 hour to surrender and leave." People panicked. Parents held their children close. Farmers ran for the comm tower. Mason stood on top of the central building and answered back. "This is registered land under the Outer Treaty of Systems," he said. "We have the right to be here." No reply came. 10 minutes later, one of the water processing plants exploded. Fire filled the sky. 3 settlers died instantly. Screams echoed across the settlement. Mason didn't panic. He stood still, then turned and walked to the colony's old radio station. He sat down, clicked on the long-range comms, and sent a message to Earth and every human outpost in the sector. This is Mason from Tarnus Colony. We were attacked without warning. Civilians are dead. We do not seek war. But if war has come, we will answer. If anyone hears this, know one thing: we will not run. The message was short, clear, and it traveled fast. On Earth, the message appeared across hundreds of screens. On old space stations, inside mining outposts, even in quiet farms on cold moons, humans listened. They saw the fire. They saw the fear. And they remembered the past. The Galactic Union had made a choice. They had touched the flame. What they didn't understand was this: humanity was not just strong in numbers or weapons. Their strength came from something deeper. They remembered pain. They remembered struggle. They had fought each other for centuries. They had survived through storms, wars, and even the breaking of their home planet's climate. And now, when one of their own cried out, the answer would come not from presidents or generals, but from those who knew what it meant to be human, quiet and strong. Builders first, but never broken. The stars had shifted. The storm was coming. The sand had barely settled after the attack. Smoke still rose from the broken water plant. Families sat in silence, holding each other. The settlers of Tarnus didn't sleep that night. The wind outside carried dust, but no one dared go out. Mason stood near the remains of the comm tower. He had spent hours repairing the backup radio. A few wires were melted, but he managed to fix it. He stared at the sky, watching the alien ships. They floated above the settlement, quiet and still, like vultures waiting for something. Inside the main hall, the council of settlers gathered. About 20 people sat at a large table. They looked tired and worried. "We lost 3 people," said Mira, the doctor. "One of them was just a boy. They hit a civilian target," said Jonas. "The farmer. We didn't even fight back. They wanted to scare us," said Rosa, the mechanic. "They didn't come for war. They came to show control." Mason looked at them, calm but firm. "They expect us to run," he said. "But we won't." One of the elders, a quiet man named Tomel, leaned forward. "We don't have soldiers," he said. "We don't have weapons strong enough to fight ships." "We're not soldiers," Mason replied. "But we're not helpless." He turned on the projector and showed them the recording of his message. Then he pointed to the blinking light on the radio system. "Earth heard us," Mason said. "And others too." In a secret location near the border of the Union's outer ring, a small ship changed course. Its hull was black, with no markings. It flew silently through space, far from the main routes. Inside sat 4 people dressed in light armor. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp. At the front sat a man named Reed. He wasn't a soldier anymore, not officially. He had left the Earth Defense Corps years ago after the Battle of Haven Reach. Since then, he had lived quietly, training. Others, watching the stars. But when he heard Mason's message, he stood up without a word. His team followed him. Reed checked the map. Tarnus was close. The alien signal came from a fleet led by someone named Varen. Reed knew the type: proud, loud, and sure of their power. "Same story," said Lyra, the sniper. "Aliens push. We push back harder." Reed didn't reply. He stared at the screen for a long moment. "They think we're still like we were before," he said. "They think we forget." Commander Varen sat inside his flagship, smiling. His armor was polished, and his voice was always loud, even when he whispered. His crew watched him with respect, but also with fear. He had led many missions for the Tranthus fleet. His record was clean. He believed humans were weak and slow. He had studied their systems, seen their history. To him, they were full of emotion and noise. He thought they would run. "Any sign of surrender?" Varen asked. His officer checked the screen. "No, Commander. They're still holding position. Their leader continues to broadcast messages." Varen laughed. "They tried to act brave. We burn one more building. They'll learn." His ships moved again. This time, they fired on a solar relay. The blast shook the ground. No one died this time. But power across the settlement went down. Mason stood in the dark, watching the sparks. He didn't look afraid. He simply nodded and turned to his people. "We've done all we can," he said. "Now it's their move." Reed's ship landed during the night. No lights, no sound. Only a soft click of metal as the landing gear touched the ground. The settlers didn't even notice until the team walked into the central square. Mason was the first to meet them. "You're not military," Mason said, looking at their gear. "No," Reed answered. "We're worse." The team worked fast. Lyra climbed the rooftops. She set up a long-range scope. Another team member, Bren, placed sensors around the colony. The last member, Cole, hacked into the alien signals. They didn't speak much. They knew their roles. "What do you want us to do?" Mason asked. "Stay low," Reed said. "This is going to end soon." Inside the alien command ship, Varen looked at his maps. He noticed something strange. One of their forward drones had gone. "Silent, send a scout to check that zone," he said. The scout ship moved out, but never returned. It vanished from the screen. No trace, no signal. Then a second drone went offline. Then a third. Varen stood up. "What is happening?" Suddenly, a warning light flashed. Someone had hacked their camera feeds, one by one, their own visual systems. Turned against them, the alien troops saw shadows moving in the darkness, fast shapes. "Silent strikes," Varen shouted. "Get me eyes on the ground." Now, he saw the footage. One by one, his soldiers were being taken down. Not with loud weapons, but with quiet traps, smart tools, and precise strikes. One man. For fighters, a colony that should have been easy to control was now a trap. Reed moved like a ghost through the sand. His face was covered, and his steps left no sound. He reached the outer post of the alien ship and placed a small device. It blinked once, then vanished into the sand. Cole sent a signal. The power grid inside the enemy ship dropped for 5 seconds. That was all Reed needed. He climbed the side of the craft, reached the panel, and pulled out a thin wire. A flash of blue. Sparks flew. The side gate opened. Reed stepped inside. Back in the main square, Mason stood beside Lyra. He held a small radio. "Status?" he asked. Lyra looked through her scope. "To ships grounded. One already disabled. Enemy troops are falling back. I think they're scared." Mason didn't smile. He simply watched the sky. Inside the command ship, Reed reached the bridge. Varen stood with a plasma blade in hand. "You are alone," Varen said. Reed didn't answer. He tossed a small round object on the floor. It flashed once. The ships. Lights flickered, and every screen showed a single image, the humans of Tarnus. Standing tall in the face of fire, Varen swung his blade. Reed ducked, moved close, and struck with his fist. The commander fell hard. Reed left him there and walked out. As the ship shook from a timed overload. Reed's voice came through every channel. "This is your first and last warning. Leave this planet. Do not return. We do not want war. But if you bring it, we finish it by sunrise." The alien fleet had gone. The sky was clear. The settlers began rebuilding, stronger than before. Mason stood with Reed outside the hall. "You didn't have to come," Mason said. "Yes, I did," Reed replied. "Because someone has to remind them." Mason nodded. "Remind them of what?" Reed looked at the horizon. "Of who we are." The news from Tarnus spread like wildfire across human space within hours. Videos of the attack and Reed's final warning were shared on every screen, from spaceports on Mars to small trading stations. Near the edge of known space. It wasn't just a message. It was a reminder. A reminder that humanity might stay quiet, might focus on building, farming, or mining, but when pushed, they remembered everything, and they acted fast. On Earth, in the underground city of Nova Terra, an emergency meeting was called. The Global Council, made up of leaders from every human colony in Earth itself, gathered inside a large glass hall beneath the old continents. The air was tense. Many of them looked shocked. Some looked angry. One of the council members, an older woman named Hannah, stood up and spoke first. "The aliens hit a civilian settlement. No warning, no talk, just fire." Another member, Tomas, added, "And yet, they still think we will not respond. They believe we fear them." There was silence for a moment. Then came the voice of General Wren. head of the Earth Defense Forces. We have to be careful, she said. If we declare open war, more colonies could be put at risk. But Tarnus was already attacked. Hannah said firmly, and they sent no army, just for people, and it worked. Many looked around the table. Then Tomas spoke again. It's time we bring back Ashfall. The room went quiet. Ashfall was an old protocol, a system designed for one-purpose rapid human response when official forces were too slow, or when the threat was not from a regular enemy. Under protocol Ashfall, retired soldiers, scouts, and engineers with field experience could be called back. They were not part of any army. They were independent but trained to protect humanity at any cost. Some people feared Ashfall. It was messy, fast, and not always controlled, but it got results. On a cold mining moon called Calver 6, a man named Dren sat alone in a small workshop. He was fixing a broken loader when a red light blinked on his console. He stood slowly, wiped his hands, and looked at the screen. Ashfall active. Unit 12 requested. Destination, Viewership sector. He didn't speak. He opened a locker. Inside were old tools, a rusted exosuit, and a folded Earth flag. He packed quickly, back on Tarnus. The settlers had returned to their routines, but nothing was the same. Half the solar panels were gone. The power grid had been rebuilt, but with limited energy. Some fields were burned. The children no longer played outside after dark. Mason walked through the colony each morning, checking every building. His face was more serious now. He spoke less. He carried a toolkit and a sidearm. Reed and his team remained in the area, working quietly. They helped set up a few hidden defenses. Lyra trained a few of the settlers how to track movement in the sand. Cole showed Rosa how to scramble a signal in case of another attack. They didn't talk much about what would come next, but they all knew this was not the end. One night, Mason sat beside Reed on the roof of the old supply building. I heard. Ashfall was activated, Mason said. Reed nodded. It was. That means others are coming. Reed looked at the stars above. They're already on the way. On Viewership 9, the Hall of Judgment was filled again. The attack on Tarnus had failed. The Drantha ships had been damaged. Their commander, Varen, had disappeared. No one had expected such a fast and organized human response. Elder Koro stood once more at the center of the hall. His voice was calm, but the warning in it was clear. I told you, he said. I told you not to push them. Some of the younger races, like the Fenari and the Dranthas, argued back. They are dangerous, one shouted. We must show them we are not afraid. They acted without a formal vote, another added. They broke order. They protected their people, Koro said. That is not breaking order. That is surviving. One of the Serenthi delegates, a tall figure with golden skin, stood quietly. There is something else, the Serenthi said. Our spies report movement across human systems. Ships are changing course. Private vessels are arming. Supply stations are filling fast. Koro turned to the council. They are not sending armies. They are sending people. That is what you do not understand. You fight with fleets and rules. They fight with memory and fire. The hall fell silent again. In deep space, a small cargo ship entered the Viewership sector. It looked like a common freighter, but inside, the crew was different. Dren was there. So was a young pilot named Juno, known for flying through asteroid fields without maps. A heavy-built woman named Riva handled gear and weapons. Each one had their own story. Each one had seen battles the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Reed had sent them coordinates. As they approached Tarnus, they stayed off all major channels. They used old codes. No one knew who they were. That was how they liked it. When they landed, Mason met them at the pad. You look like trouble, he said, half smiling. Dren stepped down and looked around. Looks like you've already had some. They shook hands. Riva opened a crate and handed Mason a small device. Local shield generator. Won't stop a full blast, but it will give you time. Mason stared at the gear. Why help us? Juno replied, because someone listened. You didn't run. That night, the stars over Tarnus looked a little brighter. Mason stood outside the hall, watching the new rivals work with the locals. Children peeked around corners, curious about the strange newcomers. Reed joined him. "They'll send more ships," Reed said. "I know," Mason replied. "They'll be bigger next time." "I know that too." Reed looked at him. "And you're not leaving?" Mason shook his head. "This is our home. Let them come." Reed didn't say more. He looked out over the desert. Calm but ready, the wind picked up. Dust swirled in the air. Somewhere beyond the hills, new lights appeared, ships landing in silence. The storm was still building, but now the fire had spread. It was not just about Tarnus anymore. It was about the message. You can threaten humans. You can even hurt them. But once you provoke them, once you make them remember what they survived, they do not stop. They rise. And they bring others with them. The nights on Tarnus had grown colder, but the people didn't complain. They worked harder, faster. The attack had changed everything. There was no more waiting, no more guessing. Now, everyone prepared. New faces arrived daily. Not soldiers, but fighters. Not officials, but doers. Some came alone. Others brought small ships filled with tools, parts, weapons, or food. Each of them had heard the same message. Tarnus stood. Humanity stood with it. In the center of the settlement, Reed had set up a command tent, though he never called it that. It was just a place with maps, equipment, and quiet planning. Mason entered the tent in the early morning. Reed was standing at the table, marking something on a digital screen. "They're moving again." Reed said. "More ships?" Mason asked. "Yes, this time a full Dranthus battle group. Not scouts. Not patrols. A real fleet." Mason crossed his arms. "How long?" 3 days. Maybe less. They'll try to hit hard and leave fast." Mason didn't flinch. "We won't let them." Reed nodded. "That's why we start now." At the edge of the settlement, Cole and Reva worked on something that looked like a pile of broken machines. It was a trap built from old mining drills, heat sensors, and parts from farming drones. "This one will punch through armor," Reva said, smiling as she tightened a bolt. Cole adjusted a wire. "As long as it doesn't blow up in our face." Nearby, Juno parked her ship behind a rocky ridge. She had fitted it with commo netting and moved its heat core underground from the sky. It looked like part of the desert. The settlers joined in. Jonas and his sons dug trenches near the front gate. Mira set up a first aid post in the old food storage room. Rosa and Tomo helped place motion sensors around the hilltops. Everyone had a job. Everyone had a reason. They were not soldiers, but they were ready. In space, the Dranthus fleet moved in formation. Commander Zelth stood at the front of the bridge, arms behind his back, watching the dark space ahead. He had reviewed the reports from Commander Varen. He had seen the damage, the losses, and the quiet shame that followed. He didn't want revenge. He wanted order. "They must be reminded of their place," Zelth said to his officers. Scouts report increased activity on Tarnus. One officer replied. "More humans arriving. Strange heat signatures around the colony. They're preparing," Zelth said. "Good. Let them waste their energy. We'll crush it in one strike." He ordered his ships into attack positions. The sky over Tarnus would burn. The humans would see their mistake. The night before the attack, Mason walked through the colony. The air was cold, but he didn't feel it. He passed by the gardens, the homes, the new defenses. He saw people sitting around fires, some cleaning tools, others telling stories. No one was panicking. No one was running. He found Reed sitting on a rock outside the western ridge. "Couldn't sleep?" Mason asked. "Didn't try." Reed replied. They both looked at the sky. A few stars were missing. The fleet was close now, blocking out small patches of light. "They'll hit hard," Reed said. "I know," Mason answered. "But they won't break us." "No, they won't." Reed looked at him. "You've changed since the first attack." Mason smiled a little. "I think I just remember who we are." Reed nodded. "That's what they never understand. They think we're just builders, just settlers. They forget what made us strong in the first place." The attack began just before dawn. It started with a loud hum in the sky, then flashes of light. The Dranthus fleet dropped into low orbit. and their main ships fired straight at the settlement. But the shots missed. Reed had moved the key systems underground. The real targets were empty buildings, hollow structures made to look like centers. As the ships passed overhead, a signal went out from Cole. Every trap across the ridges came to life. Explosions lit up the hills. Shrapnel flew into the sky. One of the lower cruisers took a direct hit to its underbelly and spun out of control. Trent and Riva, stationed at the West Trench, opened fire with rail rifles. They aimed only at engines and weak points, no wasted. Shots. Juno, from her camouflaged ship, launched signal jammers that broke the Dranthus comms. Their orders got delayed. Their ships drifted out of sync. ZLTH watched from above, confused. "They're better prepared than expected," he said. "Shall we retreat?" One officer asked. "No," Zelth growled. "Send ground troops. I want boots on the dirt." Dropships launched. Reed was already moving before they landed. His team split into pairs. Using the settlement's pods as traps, Lyra, positioned in the tower, took out commanders with clean shots. Her scope flashed only once before each fall. Mason led a small group to flank the incoming squads. They used dust storms as cover, moving in and out like ghosts. Tomel and Jonas's sons used old mining carts rigged with explosives. When one squad pushed too far, a cart flew downhill and exploded under their feet. The sky turned red with smoke. The ground shook with fire. But still, the colony held. Inside the med station, Mira worked without rest. She patched wounds, stopped bleeding, and kept people moving. "We're not losing anyone today," she said. Her hands covered in dust and blood. By noon, half of the Dranthus ground troops were down. Their ships were damaged, and their communication lines were broken. Commander Zelth was furious. "This is not war. This is chaos," he shouted. He ordered his flagship to descend. He wanted to lead the charge himself. But as it moved lower, Reed's team struck again. From the shadows, Cole sent a final override signal. The flagship's control system blinked. Its engine shut down for 6 seconds, long enough. Juno flew her small ship into the belly of the flagship and dropped a bomb inside the cooling shaft. It didn't explode on impact. It was slow. Silent. 30 seconds later, the sky lit up. The Dranthus flagship burned over Tarnus. Pieces fell across the hills, lighting the ground with orange fire. The rest of the fleet started pulling back. Zelf, alive but shaken, gave the only order he could: retreat. By sunset, the sky was clear again. Ash and dust floated in the air. But the colony still stood. People gathered in the square, silent at first, then someone clapped. Others joined. Soon, the sound of cheering echoed across the rocks. Reed stood near the gate, watching the horizon. Mason walked up beside him. "They'll come again," Mason said. "Yes," Reed replied. "But next time, they'll think twice." They thought. "We were just settlers." Reed nodded. "Now they know. We're more than that." Mason looked around at his people, dirty, tired, wounded, but proud. We're the fire they feared. He said. Reed didn't speak. He didn't need to. The burning sky had spoken for them all. Commander Ralvik stood on the ruined balcony of the old Drelzen War Center. The skies above him were filled with smoke, fire, and something else he didn't want to admit: fear. The humans had arrived. He gripped the edge of the rail as another explosion echoed in the distance. His officers inside were shouting, relaying damage reports from across the capital. A defense grid that had never failed in centuries was torn apart in a matter of hours. "This is impossible," whispered one of his aides, a young officer named Kellen. "We're stronger. We've always been stronger." Ralvik turned slowly. "We were never stronger. We were just lucky they never fought back like this before." Just 2 days ago, the Drelzen High Council had launched an attack on a human science colony in Sector 19. They believed it was just a weak outpost, a perfect place to send a message to Earth. But what they didn't know, what they refused to believe, was that the colony was under Earth's protection. The humans did not respond with words. They responded with power. In orbit, the sky was now a battlefield. Earth's ships were not large or decorated. They were made for function, not beauty. But they moved faster, struck harder, and used weapons the Drellson had never seen. Plasma walls bent under railgun strikes, shielding melted under focused sonic. Burst. And now, Earth's soldiers were on the surface. Ralvik watched as transport ships landed just outside the city walls. Columns of human ground forces marched with machines beside them. Four-legged walkers, small drones hovering above, and soldiers in sleek combat suits. They are not here to take prisoners, Kellen said quietly. No, Ralvik replied. They are here to teach us a lesson. On the streets, Commander Nora Alvarez gave the signal to advance. She had grown up hearing the warnings from veterans of Earth's earlier wars. She remembered her grandfather's stories how humanity was once treated as weak, scattered. Species that talked too much. Now, they didn't talk. Now, they acted. The Drellson had made one mistake. They had hurt human civilians, scientists, families, children. That was the line. Nora's voice came over the comms. Squads Alpha to Delta, take the southern grid. Watch for civilians, protect, but do not hesitate. Her troops moved like one living machine. The enemy fired from rooftops and towers. But human suits absorbed or deflected the shots. Return. Fire was precise, controlled. Every building cleared in minutes. Drone scouts reported an elite Drellson squad forming near the command center. Nora smiled. Let's pay their leaders a visit. Inside the command center, Ralvik finally gave the order. Activate the failsafe. We retreat underground. We cannot stop them here. But sir, Kellen said, eyes wide, our people are still in the city. Families, elders, the schools. I know, Ralvik snapped. But if we stay, none of us survive. He activated the hidden lift behind his chair. The wall opened, revealing a metal shaft with a platform. The ancient escape route. As they stepped onto it, the command center shook. A hole burst open in the far wall. From the smoke walked a human soldier. She had no heavy armor, no weapon raised, just calm eyes behind her helmet visor. Ralvik froze. You're Alvarez, he said. She nodded once. You attacked the colony. My people, you asked. For this, you wouldn't strike an unarmed man. Kellen blurted out. I don't have to. The war is already over. You just haven't accepted it. Before Ralvik could respond, more human soldiers entered behind her. Ralvik knew it was done. They had been outmatched, outthought, and outfought. His people had provoked something ancient in the humans. Something deadly. Honor was nothing in front of fury. I want a message sent to your council. Alvarez said, we're taking control of this city. You will evacuate all your forces from every human sector. You will surrender every prisoner. And you will not speak of war again. Ralvik clenched his fists. Or what? She leaned closer. Or Earth sends more. Outside, the human flag was raised over the Capitol Square. Civilians, both Drellson and human refugees, gathered in silence. Among them was a girl named Luma, a half-human orphan taken from the colony. She watched the human soldiers pass and whispered, They came for us. An elder Drellson beside her nodded slowly. The stories were true. You do not provoke humanity. You do not harm their own. If you do, they do not stop. On the Drellson Council ship, orbiting far from the flames, the elders received the transmission, footage from the broken capital, the warning from Commander Alvarez, the crushed pride of the Drellson military. One elder said nothing. She only stared at the screen and repeated the ancient words. They warned us. We didn't listen. Another added, now we understand why the old treaties existed, why our ancestors kept peace. They feared humanity. The room was silent, and in the silence came one decision, surrender. The fires had stopped, but the smoke still hung in the sky above the Drellson capital. The fighting was over. Streets once filled with panic were now quiet. Human banners flew above many government buildings. Patrol drones watched from above. The war had ended, but the real test was just beginning. Commander Nora Alvarez stood at the center of the square where the surrender was signed. Her soldiers stood guard as Drellson officials approached. They looked smaller now, not in size, but in spirit. Their uniforms were dusty, their heads lowered. Pride had been replaced with regret. The first to speak was Elder Pharaohs, a tall and once proud figure of the Drelsen Council. He stepped forward slowly, holding a silver rod, the symbol of peace in their culture. He raised it and spoke, his voice firm but respectful. We request a ceasefire, full retreat from all human-claimed sectors. We agree to return every prisoner, and never attack your kind again. Nora didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the elder. Words mean little now, she said. If you want peace, you'll have to show it through action. Pharaoh bowed his head. Then tell us what must be done. In the following days, Earth set strict terms. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice and balance. The humans knew peace built on fear wouldn't last. It had to be built on understanding and accountability. Nora and her team stayed behind to oversee the rebuilding. The first task was freeing every human and half-human prisoner taken during the Drelsen raids. The jails were full of innocent scientists, medics, traitors, and even children. Each one walked out confused, blinking into the sunlight, unsure if they were dreaming. Among them was Dr. Jules, the lead scientist from the destroyed colony in Sector 19. He had been captured, starved, and questioned. When he saw Nora standing outside the gates, he didn't speak. He just gave a weak salute, and she nodded back. "You're safe now," she said. The news of the releases spread quickly across the stars. Humanity's forces did not destroy cities. They repaired them. Where buildings had fallen, they helped raise new ones. They brought clean water, power systems, and food to both humans and Drelsen alike. Some Drelsen civilians were afraid at first. They had grown up hearing lies about humans. Stories that painted Earth's people as brutal, wild, and uncivilized. But when they saw human medics helping their wounded, soldiers rebuilding homes, and officers sharing food, their views began to change. A young Drelsen boy named Chiron approached a human engineer. One day, "Why are you helping us?" "My father said humans only care about their own." The engineer, a kind-faced woman named Rosa, smiled and handed him a water bottle. "Your leaders attacked us, but you didn't. We don't fight children. We help them." Chiron looked at the bottle, then at her. For the first time, he smiled. Back in orbit, Earth's High Command sent a message to the Drelsen Council. The message was simple. "We will not hold this war against your people forever. But if you want peace, you must work for it. You must unlearn hate, open your borders, and accept that we are equals, not prey." The Drelsen Council accepted the terms. Some elders stepped down, admitting their mistakes. Others joined Earth's diplomatic groups, trying to build something better. Commander Nora was invited to speak before the new Drelsen Assembly. It was the first time a human had ever been given that honor. She stood on the round stage in front of thousands. Cameras broadcast her words across planets. "I don't stand here as a conqueror," she said. "I stand here as a daughter of Earth, a world that once knew war, but learned peace through hard work. We came here to protect our people, not destroy yours. But understand this: if you threaten us again, we will defend ourselves completely." She paused, then looked around the chamber. "Peace is not given, peace is earned." The room was quiet. Then slowly, the Drelsen began to clap, one by one. It was not loud, but it was honest. In the following weeks, mixed teams of humans and Drelsen began working together. Schools reopened. Trade routes were restored, and most importantly, young ones from both sides began to ask questions not about war, but about friendship. At a rebuilt school in the outer district, a human girl named Tara sat beside a Drelsen boy named Vel. They were drawing pictures for an art lesson. Tara's drawing showed Earth and the Drelsen world connected by a bridge. "What's that?" Vel asked, pointing to the middle of the bridge. Tara smiled. "That's you and me." Vel looked at the picture again and nodded. "I like that." In the last meeting before Nora's return to Earth, Elder Pharaoh met her privately. He handed her a data crystal. "It contains everything," he said. "The names of those who gave the order to attack your colony, the weapons used, the real reasons. We kept it hidden for years. Now, you should have it." Nora took the crystal, but said nothing. "You could use it to punish us," Pharaoh added. "Maybe," she said. "But maybe it's better to use it to make sure this never happens again." Pharaoh looked out the window. Below them, Children from both species were playing together in a park built on old rubble. I hope we learn, he said softly as the human ship rose from the Drelzen world. Nora looked back from the observation deck. The scars of war were still there, but so was the growth. Change had begun. She turned to her second-in-command, a young officer named Malik. Think they'll keep the peace this time, he asked. Nora nodded slowly. They've seen what happens when you provoke humanity. Now they're learning what happens when you respect it. Smoke rose over the burned battlefield. The air was filled with heat, ash, and silence where one stood. The proud forces of the Zarkith Alliance. Now only wreckage remained, crushed armor, twisted metal. In the deep silence of defeat, the human soldiers moved slowly through the area. They weren't celebrating. They weren't shouting in victory. They were quiet, focused, controlled. General Mason stood at the front of his command vehicle, watching everything with a tired gaze. His face was covered in dust, and a thin cut ran along his cheek. He had not slept in days, but he stood straight, with pride in his eyes. Behind him, a young soldier named Rafi came running up, holding a message device. Sir, Rafi said, saluting. A transmission from the Elder's Circle. The Zarkith homeworld has surrendered. Mason didn't move for a few seconds. He just stared ahead, thinking of all the lives lost, human and alien, all because the warning was ignored. They finally listened, Mason said. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Rafi nodded. They said they should have listened before. They're asking for terms of peace. They say they're ready to talk. Mason finally turned. His boots crunched softly over the scorched earth. He took the device and stared at the blinking light on its screen. Prepare a reply, he said. Tell them humanity accepts peace, but they'll answer for what they did on Outpost 17 and on the colony ships. We don't forget. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, in the council hall of the Zarkith elders, the mood was heavy. Elder Tamon, the oldest member of the circle, sat with his eyes closed. His breathing was slow. I warned them, he said. His voice was dry and full of regret. I told them never to push the humans, never to test their patience. The others said nothing. They couldn't deny it anymore. Humanity had become something they had never expected, a power that didn't rely only on numbers or size. It was something deeper, a fire in their hearts, a refusal to break. They are not like us. Elder Tamon continued. They don't fight because they enjoy war. They fight because they have no choice. And once they decide to stand, nothing can move them. Elder Solon, who had once mocked the humans, now looked pale. What do we do now? We live with the results, Tamon said, and we teach our children never to make the same mistake. Back on the human flagship Resolute, Captain Mira stood before the communication screen. She had just finished talking to the United Earth Command. The war was officially over. She lowered her arms and turned to her crew. It's done, she said. They surrendered. We're going home. A cheer rose through the room. But it wasn't loud. It was full of relief, of pain finally ending. Lieutenant Hari smiled through tired eyes. We made it, yeah, Mira said. But let's not forget what it cost us. She walked to the window and looked out into space. Debris still floated near the orbit of the last battle moon. Ships with no power, empty husks. We never wanted this, Mira said quietly to herself. But we finished it later on Earth. A ceremony was held in Unity Square. Leaders from across the planet stood together. Behind them, long walls had been built, engraved with the names of the fallen. Humans from every country, every colony, every walk of life. Families placed flowers below the names. Children looked up at pictures of heroes they never met. And above all, the sky was clear. General Mason stood on the main stage. We didn't start this war, he said into the microphone. But we ended it. Humanity stood together. We remember who we are. And when they tested us, we didn't break. The crowd listened in silence. But this is not a story of victory, Mason continued. It's a lesson, a reminder, that peace must be protected, that unity matters, that when someone says, never provoke humanity, it's not a threat, it's a plea to avoid disaster. He raised a hand. Let us remember the lives we lost. And make sure this galaxy never forgets what happens when humans are pushed too far. On a distant world, far from the war, a young alien child looked up at her teacher. Her eyes were wide. "Is it true?" she asked. "The humans did all that?" The teacher nodded. "Yes. They fought when no one believed they could win. They stood alone. At first, but they didn't back down. Why didn't we listen to the elders?" The teacher sighed. "Because we thought they were weak. We looked at their small blue planet and laughed. We forgot that strength isn't always in the body. Sometimes it lives in the heart." The girl thought about it, then looked at a small flag pinned to the classroom wall. A white background, with a small blue circle and a green leaf. The flag of the new peace alliance led by humans. "Will they hurt us again?" The teacher smiled. "Only if you give them no choice. Be kind to them. Learn from the past. The humans don't want war, but they never run from one either." And in a quiet corner of Earth, General Mason visited a grave. He knelt down, brushing some dust from the stone. The name read, "Sergeant Lena, friend, fighter." "Sister, you be proud," he said softly. "We ended it." They listened, but it took everything. He stayed there for a long time, looking at the sky dot above him. Ships carried messages of peace. Supplies, medical aid, humans helping rebuild what the war had broken, and across the stars. One message spread through every species, every colony, every fleet. The elders said, "Never provoke humanity." They didn't listen. They will now.